I used to believe home was sacred ground, a place where four walls and a roof gave you peace from the chaos of the outside world. That illusion died the moment Karen marched across my driveway with a fist full of HOA bylaws, as if they were scripture. The punchline? There is no HOA here, not one. We chose this neighborhood precisely because it was free of that nonsense. Clean skies, friendly faces, no one telling you what mailbox color you're allowed to live under. For 3 beautiful days, I thought I'd escaped. 3 days of unpacking boxes. 3 days of dragging furniture across the wood floors of a cabin that had been in my family for generations. 3 days of thinking we had finally found paradise. Then I woke up to find a neon warning taped to my own window. Unapproved wall paint color. Confused, I stepped outside. That's when Karen, our across-the-street neighbor, stabbed a finger toward my chest like a prosecutor to a criminal and said, "Here, everyone follows the HOA rules, you two. Everyone. HOA rules. Here. Only one problem. There is no HOA." She wasn't describing law or fact or county policy. She was describing some imaginary empire she built in her head. She had chosen herself as queen, and apparently she thought I would kneel. She was wrong. This wasn't her HOA turf. This was free ground, and if she wanted to declare war, she was about to learn what a non-HOA territory looks like. Let me rewind, because context matters. I'm Ryan Cole, 38, licensed architect. 3 days ago, I thought I had retired into peace at last, when I closed on my grandfather's lakefront cabin. 2 acres of wilderness kissing the calm glass of Crystal Lake. Towering pines on every side. A place where the loudest thing is loon calls at dusk, or the shiver of wind through needles. No HOA, no bureaucracy. No one checking if your flower pots match your siding. That's why it hits me so hard right now. Because at this very moment, one of my neighbors is tearing apart everything I've ever owned. Mara Jennings, a 50-something, blonde, who wears a razor-sharp bob and whose eyes are colder than anything Minnesota ever froze. Drops my moving boxes onto the driveway like they're garbage. My plates scream inside their cardboard prisons as they rattle against each other. The sound of 15 years of careful possessions scattering into fragments. You are in violation of community guidelines regarding the unauthorized use of storage space, she screeches. The words echo against the garage. The boxes slam like accusations. I look at this woman and feel the burn crawl up my neck. I remind myself why I bought this house in the first place. My entire life, I had sketched and stamped suburban nightmares where HOAs ruled lives down to the inch. Fences too tall? Fine. Grass too tall? Fine. Shutters the wrong beige? Fine and repaint. My soul screamed for freedom, which is exactly what this cabin promised. No HOA. And my grandfather, who raised walls here with his own calloused hands in 1962, never surrendered to that petty bureaucracy either. His belief was simple. A man's home should be his castle, not a cage. "Ma'am, there must be a mistake," I manage, holding my voice together while she claws through the boxes again. "This property isn't part of an HOA. I checked the county records before I signed. No association governs this area." Mara freezes mid-throw. A box marked kitchen essentials dangles in her manicured hands. She doesn't hurl this one. She gently lowers it to the concrete, then turns to me. Slowly. Terrifyingly. Her expression sliding from unhinged fury to calm, silky control. Her smile belongs in nightmares. "Oh, but you are mistaken, Mr. Cole," she says softly. "This entire lakefront neighborhood has been under voluntary HOA management since we re-established the civic renewal community last year. Every new homeowner must sign our guidelines within 72 hours of moving in. House rules, Mr. Cole. We keep things civilized." From her oversized purse, she pulls out a bulging manila folder. She fans it open on the hood of my truck like she's laying down a royal decree. Inside are stacks of papers with embossed seals. Signatures dashed across blue ink. A business card clipped to the front. Civic Renewal Community in gleaming gold letters. At a glance, it looks official enough to pass before a sleepy judge. But my architect's eye catches flaws. The clumsy Times New Roman font screaming cheap home printer. Sloppy margins that don't line up. Small inconsistencies that betray forgery. Still, I have to admit, the seals and signatures look disturbingly real. "Here," Mara says with pride, sliding sheets like cards across a poker table. "Our 2024 Resident Consensus Agreement. Our certification of incorporation. 47 pages of standards that all residents must follow for community safety." I don't bother arguing. Instead, I step aside, pull out my phone, and dial 911. Someone is trespassing on my property, destroying my belongings. Minutes later, the cavalry arrives, or so I think. A cruiser pulls up, crunching gravel under tires, and two deputies step out. Smith, thick-framed, gray-templed, with the weary eyes of a man who's seen every small-town feud possible. And Jones, younger, slimmer, posture sharp with the eagerness of someone still hungry to make a name. I expect, foolishly, that Mara will be cuffed before she finishes her rant. Instead, they listen. They actually listen, while this woman delivers her well-practiced courtroom monologue. Officers, Mr. Cole here is refusing to comply with the lawfully established civic renewal community. We were granted county enforcement authority when we reformed our organization last year. She produces another sheet, this one with a red wax seal pressed like a judge's stamp. She flourishes it like it's divine, right? Something doesn't add up. My gut agrees. So I drag my laptop from a box, flip it open on the hood, and my fingers fly. County records don't lie. And what I find slams my stomach cold. Yes, there was once an HOA here, Lakeside Commons. But I find the judgment with my own eyes. It was dissolved permanently in 2019 after an embezzlement scandal robbed hundreds of thousands. Fraudulent assessments, stolen dues, a financial graveyard. A judge dissolved the organization by court order. Legally dead. Can't be revived. Can't come back. Period. I spin the screen toward Smith. Officers, look. It's right there. This HOA was dissolved 6 years ago by a fraud court order. No replacement has been established. This land is free, legally. Whatever she's waving around isn't real. Smith's tired gaze sharpens as he scrolls through record after record. His jaw tightens. Jones peers over, youthful eagerness sobered. Mara's confident veneer cracks. For the first time, I see something primal in her eyes. Fear. But it's only there for a heartbeat before she launches into rapid-fire nonsense. Phrases like transitional governance authority and proxy continuity of management. They sound polished, but mean nothing. The deputies sigh. Civil dispute, they call it. Handle it in court. They drive away, their tail lights vanishing down the lakeside road. Mara collects her papers like a dealer collecting her cards. Methodical, precision in every fold. She looks up. Voice low, steady, dangerous. This isn't over. Mr. Cole. I've been managing this community far longer than you've been watching, and I don't welcome troublemakers who think they can ignore order. And she walks away, leaving me amid broken boxes and quiet dread. I know what I saw. Her authority is fake. Officially, legally, historically fake. But the question burning in my gut is the one she doesn't want me asking. If it's fake, why does it look so real? And how many others has she already convinced? The next morning, I stop waiting for answers to come to me. I decide to investigate myself. First, Mrs. Peterson next door, 72 years old, tending a garden thick with blossoms. When I ask if she signed any recent paperwork, her face wrinkles in thought before she smiles. Oh yes, dear. That nice Marlowe woman came last month with a survey about garbage collection. She wanted everything kept clean. My chest sinks. Next, I find Jim Mitchell, mid-40s, strong arms scrubbing his truck with a hose in one hand. He nods. Yeah, she swung by a while back. Said break-ins were happening. Needed signatures for upgraded security. Looked official. Sounded legit. And then Sarah Thompson across the street, mother of two, juggling groceries and kids tugging at her legs. Her voice wavers. She said the county needed a petition to fix the potholes on the road. She showed charts, accident numbers. Of course I signed. I thought it would keep my kids safe. By nightfall, my kitchen table looks like a detective's caseboard. Papers, notes, records scattered across wood like crime evidence. The picture is horrifying. 23 out of 31 households tricked, each presented with paperwork wrapped in different lies. To Mrs. Peterson, a garbage survey. To Jim, crime prevention. To Sarah, road safety. Everyone played like an instrument, with just enough fear and care to sign their names onto Mara's masterpiece of fraud. At the bottom of each page, small, easily ignored, fine print, I agree to participate in a resident self-governance organization. Every signature, a victory. Every neighbor, ensnared. The scope of manipulation is breathtaking. Polished, precise. Psychological warfare dressed as neighborhood care. Mara isn't improvising. She's practiced, seasoned, experienced. This is not her first rodeo, and with every page spread in front of me, one reality grows colder and clearer. Mara Jennings is running the most sophisticated con this neighborhood has ever seen. My architect training taught me to analyze structural details, and these forged documents reveal fascinating patterns. All the papers use identical margin settings, font formatting, and even the same printer signature embedded in the digital metadata. More importantly, I noticed something that makes my blood run cold. The layout and design elements are lifted directly from legitimate HOA templates available online. Mara didn't just wing this operation. She researched extensively and created a professional-grade deception that could fool most people, including law enforcement officers who don't have time to investigate every small-town dispute. Armed with this evidence, I contact Diana Walsh, a real estate attorney whose office sits in the county courthouse downtown. Diana's reputation for taking down fraudulent property schemes precedes her, and when I explain the situation, her interest sharpens immediately. Ryan, what you're describing requires very specific legal knowledge to establish a legitimate HOA in this state, requires 75% resident approval through public vote, official registration with state authorities, and 30-day public notification periods. Diana's expertise confirms my suspicions that Mara's operation violates multiple state laws designed to protect property owners from exactly this type of fraud. The legal consultation reveals something even more disturbing about Mara's strategy. Diana explains that creating fake community organizations is often the first step in larger property acquisition schemes where scammers use manufactured authority to pressure residents into selling their homes below market value. These operations usually involve multiple people and significant financial backing. Your Mara isn't working alone, and she's definitely done this before. Diana's warning makes me realize I'm not just dealing with a neighborhood busybody, but potentially a professional criminal organization. Within hours of my meeting with Diana, Mara's counterattack arrives in the form of an intimidating legal document delivered by certified mail. The cease and desist letter accuses me of harassment, defamation of character, and interference with lawful community organization activities. The letterhead belongs to Marcus Jennings, Esquire, whose law office address matches Mara's home address. According to public records, the legal threats are comprehensive and professionally written, designed to scare me into backing down before I can expose the entire operation. Diana's investigation into Marcus Jennings produces a bombshell that changes everything about this case. Marcus isn't just Mara's lawyer. He's her son, which creates a massive conflict of interest that violates legal ethics rules. Even more damaging, Marcus's license to practice law in our state was suspended 2 years ago, following a malpractice case involving client fund misappropriation. The cease and desist letter threatening me was written by someone with no legal authority to practice law, making it worthless paper and potentially another criminal act. The walls are closing in around Mara's operation, but her desperation makes her more dangerous than ever. Late that evening, she appears at my front door with Marcus in tow, both of them radiating the kind of barely controlled anger that comes from seeing carefully laid plans start to unravel. "Mr. Cole, you're making a serious mistake by interfering with our community management activities," Mara says, her voice carrying an edge that wasn't there during our first encounter. "We have legal authority here, and we won't hesitate to use it against residents who refuse to comply with established regulations." Standing there in my doorway, facing down two people whose entire operation is built on lies and intimidation, I realize I've stumbled into something much bigger than a simple neighborhood dispute. Mara's confidence, despite mounting evidence against her, suggests she has backup plans and resources I haven't discovered yet. But I also know that her son's invalid legal credentials give me a powerful weapon to use against them. The question now becomes, how far is Mara willing to go to protect her fraudulent empire? And do I have the courage to find out? Mara's next move reveals the true sophistication of her operation. Within a week of our confrontation, professional-look flyers appeared in every mailbox announcing the formation of Civic Renewal Community, a 501c4 non-profit organization dedicated to preserving lakefront property values and community standards. The marketing materials are slick enough to come from a Fortune 500 company, complete with stock photos of happy families and testimonials from supposed satisfied residents. What chills me to the bone is how quickly she's legitimized her fake authority using the non-profit system that most people trust without question. The grand opening event takes place at the community center on a Saturday morning, and I watch from my cabin as cars fill the parking lot. Mara has hired what appears to be a public relations firm to orchestrate this show, complete with a local news crew filming residents discussing their enthusiasm for community-led governance. Professional banners hang from the building reading, "Building Tomorrow's Neighborhood Today," and volunteers in matching t-shirts hand out glossy brochures detailing the organization's mission. The whole production screams legitimate authority to anyone who doesn't know the truth about Mara's manufactured empire. My first official violation notice arrives 3 days later, delivered in a crisp white envelope with the Civic Renewal Community logo embossed in gold foil. The document accuses me of painting my cabin's exterior trim and corn silk color code, FFF8DC, without proper Architectural Review Board approval. The specificity is stunning. They've analyzed my paint choice down to the exact hexadecimal color code, creating an illusion of thorough professional oversight. The notice demands I repaint within 14 days or face escalating financial penalties that start at $150 and double weekly until compliance is achieved. The harassment campaign intensifies with mathematical precision over the following weeks. A second violation cites my front porch lighting for exceeding the 2,700 kelvins color temperature limit established for residential illumination consistency. The third notice claims my small American flag violates a completely fictional municipal ordinance about flag display dimensions. Each document arrives with increasingly threatening language about community standards, enforcement, and references to legal proceedings that sound official enough to intimidate most property owners into immediate compliance. Mara's strategy becomes clear when I receive a formal request for financial transparency regarding Civic Renewal Community's operations. I demand to see their board meeting minutes, conflict of interest policies, and detailed financial records, showing how they're spending the assessment fees they're collecting from frightened residents. The response comes from Marcus Jenningson official letterhead, citing proprietary information protection and organizational privacy rights as justification for refusing my request. The letter threatens legal action if I continue harassing community leadership with frivolous demands. My breakthrough comes through a different angle entirely. As an architect, I understand that legitimate nonprofit organizations must register with the Internal Revenue Service to legally collect fees or issue tax-deductible receipts. I call the IRS Nonprofit Verification Hotline and provide them with Civic Renewal Community's claimed tax identification number. The response stops me cold. No organization by that name or number exists in their database. Mara has been collecting money from residents under pretenses, which constitutes federal tax fraud in addition to her state-level crimes. Further investigation reveals that the bank account Mara uses for community assessments is registered under her personal name rather than any organizational entity. She's depositing neighborhood fees directly into her private checking account, which violates numerous financial regulations governing nonprofit operations. The paper trail shows she's collected over $8,000 in the past 6 months from residents who believe they're contributing to legitimate community improvements. Diana Walsh confirms this evidence would be devastating in court and could result in federal charges. The most disturbing discovery comes when I research the template documents Mara has been using for her fake organization. The letterhead, mission statement, and even the architectural review guidelines are copied verbatim from a defunct homeowner association in Phoenix, Arizona. She's essentially running a sophisticated copy and paste operation, stealing the intellectual property of legitimate organizations to create her fraudulent authority structure. This level of premeditation suggests she's been planning this scheme for months or even years. But Mara's desperation shows when I confront her with the IRS information during a chance encounter at the local grocery store. For the first time since this nightmare began, I see genuine fear in her eyes instead of calculated confidence. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Ryan," she says, her voice dropping to an almost whisper. "I built something beautiful here once. When I was just a little girl visiting my grandmother's cottage by the lake, these people destroyed it with their selfishness and laziness." Her confession reveals a twisted personal motivation beneath the financial crimes, suggesting she genuinely believes she's restoring some idealized version of community life from her childhood memories. The revelation that Mara has emotional investment in this area beyond simple profit makes her infinitely more dangerous than a typical scammer. She's not just stealing money. She's trying to rebuild a fantasy from her past, using other people's property and lives as raw materials. This psychological insight explains her willingness to risk federal charges and her apparent confidence that she can somehow make her fake authority become real through sheer force of will and careful manipulation of legal systems. As I drive home from the grocery store, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows follow me at exactly the speed limit, maintaining perfect formation like a presidential motorcade. They disappear when I turn into my driveway, but the message is clear. Mara has resources and connections I haven't yet discovered. The woman who started this conflict by throwing my belongings around a garage has evolved into something far more sophisticated and threatening. Whatever backup plan she's been developing is about to be revealed, and I have the sinking feeling that my amateur detective work has pushed her past the point of pretending to play by any rules at all. The feeling of being watched starts subtly, like an itch between my shoulder blades that won't go away. My trash cans get moved slightly each week, positioned just differently enough to notice if you're paying attention. Mail arrives already opened and clumsily resealed with clear tape that catches the light wrong. Most disturbing are the muddy footprints I discover around my bedroom window after particularly quiet nights. Size 10 boots with a distinctive wear pattern on the left heel. Someone is conducting systematic surveillance of my daily routines, and they're getting bolder about leaving evidence of their intrusion. My architect's background in building security systems serves me well as I design a counter-surveillance network around my property. Using my knowledge of sightlines and structural blind spots, I install 6 hidden cameras with overlapping coverage zones, motion sensors that trigger smartphone alerts, and infrared night vision capabilities that can capture clear footage even in complete darkness. The installation takes 3 careful days of work, positioning each device to maximize coverage while remaining invisible to casual observation. If someone wants to spy on me, they're going to provide me with all the evidence I need to destroy them. The first week of surveillance footage reveals patterns that make my blood run cold. Harold Brennan, the friendly 67-year-old neighbor who always waves when he walks his golden retriever, transforms into something entirely different when he thinks nobody's watching. My cameras capture him measuring my grass height with a wooden ruler at 11:30 at night, photographing my front porch lighting from multiple angles like a crime scene investigator, and using what appears to be a professional sound meter to test noise levels around my property. His friendly neighbor act has been a complete fabrication designed to gather intelligence for Mara's harassment campaign. The sabotage escalates beyond simple spying into dangerous territory that could have killed me. Harold systematically loosens the bolts holding my deck railing, creating a potentially fatal hazard if I leaned against it with full body weight. He pours salt water on specific sections of my landscaping, causing brown patches that would justify citations for property maintenance violations. Most sickeningly, he places dead fish near my air conditioning intake, filling my home with rotting smells that would make the property virtually uninhabitable. These aren't pranks. They're calculated attacks designed to force me to abandon my home through manufactured living conditions. My decision to contact investigative journalist Monica Rivera proves to be Agamekar in this escalating conflict. Monica specializes in exposing community fraud schemes for the Valley Tribune, and when I explain Mara's operation, her interest sharpens immediately. Ryan, what you're describing fits a pattern we've been tracking across multiple states. These fake HOA scams are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and they're usually connected to larger property acquisition schemes. Monica's expertise gives me hope that Mara's empire might finally face serious scrutiny from someone with the resources to expose it properly. Monica's investigation uncovers information that transforms my understanding of who I'm really fighting. The woman calling herself Mara Jennings is actually Martha Goldman, a professional scammer with an extensive criminal history spanning Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. Her modus operandi involves infiltrating desirable communities, creating fake authority structures, and using psychological pressure to force residents to sell their properties below market value. Court records show she's successfully displaced 47 families over 8 years, generating estimated profits exceeding $500,000 from her various schemes. The FBI investigation files Monica obtains through Freedom of Information Act requests paint a terrifying picture of a criminal network operating with near impunity across state lines. Martha Goldman works with a team of acquisition specialists who identify vulnerable communities, conduct reconnaissance on target properties, and implement systematic harassment campaigns designed to break residents' will to fight. The sophistication of their operation includes professional document forgers, private investigators, and even corrupt local officials who provide cover for their activities in exchange for financial compensation. But the most devastating piece of information Monica uncovers hits me like a physical blow to the chest. Among the documented victims of Martha's Colorado operation is Michael Chen, my cousin, who committed suicide 3 years ago after losing his family's home to what we thought were legitimate foreclosure proceedings. The FBI files detail how Martha's team used fake community violations and manufactured legal threats to pressure Michael into selling his property for 60% of its actual value when he couldn't make the payments on his new mortgage. The financial stress and shame drove him to take his own life rather than face his family's disappointment. This revelation transforms my fight from a personal property dispute into something far more profound and emotionally charged. Martha Goldman didn't just steal Michael's house. She murdered him as surely as if she'd pulled a trigger. The grief and rage I feel knowing that my cousin died because of this woman's greed gives me strength I didn't know I possessed. This is no longer about protecting my cabin. It's about getting justice for Michael and preventing other families from suffering the same devastating loss. Martha has made this fight personal in ways she never intended, and now she's going to learn what happens when you destroy someone's family. The escalation continues when my phone rings at 2 in the morning, and a digitally disguised voice delivers a message that chills my blood. Stop digging into things that don't concern you or you'll regret it more than you can imagine. The call comes from a number that traces back to a burner phone purchased with cash, showing the level of operational security Martha's network employs. They know I've discovered Michael's connection to their crimes, and they're desperate enough to make direct threats against my safety. But instead of intimidating me into backing down, the threat only confirms that I'm finally getting close to exposing their entire operation. Standing in my kitchen at 2:15 in the morning, staring at my phone and thinking about my dead cousin, I realize I've crossed a point of no return in this conflict. Martha Goldman has revealed herself to be far more dangerous than a simple neighborhood scammer. She's a predator who destroys families for profit and has the resources to make people disappear when they become inconvenient. But she's also made a critical mistake by threatening me directly, providing evidence of criminal intimidation that could finally bring federal law enforcement into this case. The question now becomes whether I dare to see this fight through to its conclusion, knowing that Martha has already proven she's willing to drive people to suicide to protect her criminal enterprise. My decision to take this fight public starts with a simple video recorded on my phone while standing in my driveway. Surrounded by the evidence of Martha's harassment campaign, the first upload to YouTube is titled, "Woman Claims My House Belongs to Her HOA When No HOA Exists." And within 24 hours, it explodes beyond my wildest expectations. 347,000 views pour in from across the country, with comments flooding in from people sharing similar experiences with fake community organizations. The response proves that Martha's scheme isn't unique. It's part of a nationwide epidemic of property fraud that most people never hear about until it happens to them. The second video, caught fake HOA Karen spy network on camera, showcases Harold Brennan's nighttime surveillance activities with crystal-clear footage that leaves no room for doubt about the systematic nature of this operation. This video hit 1.2 million views in 48 hours with shares spreading across TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter like wildfire. Comments revealed dozens of similar cases where friendly neighbors turned out to be intelligence gatherers for fake authority figures, and the hashtag #FakeHoScam begins trending nationally as victims find their voices through my story. The viral success attracts attention from major media outlets, but more importantly, it empowers other victims in my own community to finally speak up about their experiences with Martha's organization. Emily Carter, a single mother working 2 jobs to support her kids, reveals that Martha threatened to call Child Protective Services if she didn't pay a $500 child safety assessment fee for playground equipment in her backyard. The threat exploited Emily's greatest fear as a single parent, demonstrating Martha's psychological sophistication in targeting each victim's most vulnerable pressure points. Jeff Morrison, a decorated military veteran living on disability benefits, shares his story about Martha demanding he remove his American flag because it allegedly violated community aesthetic guidelines. When Jeff refused, citing his service to the country that flag represents, Martha escalated to harassment phone calls at all hours and anonymous reports to Veterans Services claiming he was mentally unstable. The cruelty of targeting a disabled veteran's patriotic display reveals the depth of Martha's willingness to weaponize anything, including military service, to maintain her fraudulent authority. The Miller family's testimony provides the most heartbreaking example of Martha's systematic cruelty toward vulnerable residents. Robert and Patricia Miller, both in their 70s with serious health issues, nearly lost their home of 30 years after Martha initiated fake foreclosure proceedings based on manufactured violations. The stress of fighting fraudulent legal action while managing chemotherapy treatments pushed Patricia into a health crisis that required emergency hospitalization. Martha's willingness to terrorize elderly cancer patients for financial gain demonstrates a level of sociopathic behavior that goes far beyond simple greed. These personal stories create a groundswell of community resistance that transforms individual victimization into collective action. Within a week, the Facebook group Lakeside Residents Against Fake HOA grows to 127 members, representing nearly every household in our area. The group becomes a coordination center for sharing evidence, comparing Martha's tactics across different properties, and developing unified strategies to fight back against her organization. For the first time since this nightmare began, Martha faces organized opposition instead of isolated, frightened individuals. But Martha's counterattack reveals the resources and legal sophistication backing her operation. Through a new attorney hired from outside the area, she files a comprehensive federal lawsuit against me, claiming defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, cyberbullying, and interference with legitimate business operations. The damages claimed total $2 million, an amount specifically calculated to bankrupt me, even if I ultimately win the case. The message is clear. Martha has enough financial backing to weaponize the legal system itself against anyone who threatens her criminal enterprise. The lawsuit's most chilling aspect is its detailed knowledge of my personal finances, employment history, and family connections. Information that could only have been obtained through professional investigation services. The complaint references my architectural license status, my grandfather's estate proceedings, and even Michael's suicide, twisting his death into evidence of my supposed mental instability and tendency toward harassment. Martha's team has conducted comprehensive background research on me, preparing for legal warfare with the thoroughness of a military operation. My breakthrough comes from an unexpected source, when Jennifer Walsh, Martha's former secretary, contacts me through an encrypted messaging app with an offer that could change everything. Jennifer explains that she kept digital copies of every email, financial record, and strategic planning document during her 18 months working for Civic Renewal Community. I quit when I realized what they were really doing to people, she tells me during our clandestine meeting at a coffee shop 40 meters from our neighborhood. I have evidence that could put Martha and her entire network in federal prison. The archive Jennifer provides is a prosecutor's dream come true, containing 3 years of detailed communications between Martha and her criminal associates across multiple states. The emails reveal a sophisticated network of property acquisition specialists who share target lists, tactical strategies, and profit-sharing agreements for their various schemes. Financial records show that Martha's operation has generated $847,000 in illegal revenue from forced home sales, fake assessment fees, and fraudulent legal settlements. Training materials included in the archive read like a manual for psychological warfare against property owners. The most devastating evidence comes in the form of target assessment reports that analyze each property owner's vulnerabilities and resistance potential. My own file contains detailed psychological profiles, financial analysis, and recommended pressure tactics specifically designed to exploit my grief over Michael's death. Martha's team identified my cousin's suicide as a weakness they could manipulate, planning to use my emotional trauma as leverage to force my compliance or departure. The calculated cruelty of weaponizing family tragedy reveals the true evil at the heart of their operation. But the archive also contains information that elevates this case beyond local crime into a matter of national security concern. Email correspondence reveals that Martha's network has successfully infiltrated and corrupted local government officials in 6 states, paying bribes to county clerks, building inspectors, and even sheriff's deputies to provide cover for their activities. The corruption extends to state-level politicians, who receive campaign contributions in exchange for blocking legislation that would strengthen property owner protections against fake community organizations. The final piece of evidence that transforms this case from significant to explosive is a detailed implementation plan for Phase 3 operations in our county. The document outlines Martha's strategy to expand beyond individual property acquisition into wholesale community takeover using manufactured crises to justify emergency governance measures that would give her organization legal authority over entire neighborhoods. The plan includes provisions for forced relocations, mandatory property assessments, and even the establishment of private security forces to enforce compliance with fabricated regulations. As I sit in my cabin reviewing Jennifer's evidence archive, I realize that stopping Martha has become about far more than protecting my property or getting justice for Michael. Her organization represents a fundamental threat to property rights and democratic governance that extends far beyond our lakefront community. The question now is whether I dare to take on a criminal network with the resources to corrupt government officials and the ruthlessness to drive people to suicide when they become inconvenient. But with Jennifer's evidence in hand and a growing community of allies supporting me, I finally have the weapons I need to destroy Martha's empire and ensure she never terrorizes another family again. The fire alarm's piercing shriek tears me from deep sleep at 2:34 a.m., followed immediately by the acrid smell of gasoline and burning plastic that sends my survival instincts into overdrive. Racing down to the garage in my underwear, I discover flames crawling up the walls from multiple ignition points, where someone has thrown Molotov cocktails through the side windows. My truck is already engulfed, and the fire is spreading toward the main support beams with terrifying speed. This isn't a random act of vandalism. It's a professional arson attempt designed to destroy my home and potentially kill me in the process. The secret escape route my grandfather built during his paranoid Cold War years saved my life in ways he never could have imagined. Hidden behind a false wall in the basement, the tunnel leads 50 yards through the hillside to emerge near the lakeshore, invisible from the main house and unknown to anyone who hasn't studied the original architectural plans. As I crawl through the narrow passage with flames roaring above me, I can hear the distinctive sound of motorcycle engines accelerating away from my property. The arsonist planned this attack with military precision, including predetermined escape routes and timing calculated to maximize damage while minimizing their exposure to law enforcement response. My hidden camera system, powered by independent batteries and uploading directly to cloud storage, captures the entire attack in high-definition detail that would make any prosecutor weep with joy. The footage shows two figures in dark clothing systematically placing incendiary devices around my garage before igniting them with professional efficiency. More importantly, the cameras record their escape vehicle, a landscaping truck with a clearly visible license plate, DM7834. Driven by someone whose face is partially captured as he turns to look back at the growing flames. This isn't random violence. It's a coordinated attack by people stupid enough to use their work vehicle for attempted murder. Fire department response takes 12 agonizing minutes. Long enough for the garage to become a total loss, but short enough to save the main house from destruction. The responding firefighters immediately recognize the burn patterns as deliberate arson, calling in Detective Carmen Orozco from the county's Arson Investigation Unit. Carmen's expertise in fire scene analysis confirms what I already know. This was a professional job using accelerants and multiple ignition points designed to ensure total destruction. Evidence she collects will be crucial for both criminal prosecution and my insurance claim, assuming I live long enough to file it. The license plate leads police directly to Danny Morrison, a 34-year-old landscaper with a record of minor drug offenses and a desperate need for quick money to pay off gambling debts. Under interrogation, Danny's resolve crumbles faster than a house of cards in a hurricane, revealing the financial arrangements that turned him from a garden maintenance worker into a would-be murderer. Mara offered me $5,000 cash to make sure your house burned down completely, he confesses to Detective Orozco. She said you were threatening her family's safety and needed to be stopped permanently. Danny's testimony provides the direct connection between Martha and attempted murder, that law enforcement needs to finally take this case seriously. His confession includes details about planning meetings held at Martha's house where she provided detailed architectural drawings of my property and specific instructions about which areas to target for maximum structural damage. The premeditation is undeniable, transforming this from a simple arson case into a conspiracy to murder with substantial jail time for everyone involved. Martha's desperation has finally pushed her into crimes that carry federal penalties and mandatory minimum sentences. The search warrant executed at Martha's residence uncovers a treasure trove of evidence that reveals the full scope of her criminal enterprise. Police discover meeting notes detailing escalation strategies for dealing with uncooperative residents, receipts for gasoline and glass bottles used in the Molotov cocktails, and detailed surveillance charts mapping my daily routines down to the minute. Most damaging are the business cards from Premier Property Acquisition LLC, a real estate investment company that specializes in purchasing distressed properties at below-market prices. The connection between Martha's harassment campaign and this acquisition company finally explains the true motive behind her elaborate schemes. Premier Property Acquisition operates as a vulture investment firm that deliberately creates community problems to lower property values before swooping in with cash offers to desperate homeowners. Their business model depends on manufactured crises that make properties appear undesirable or dangerous, allowing them to purchase valuable real estate at substantial discounts before flipping them for enormous profits. Martha functions as their acquisition specialist, earning 15% commission for every property successfully forced into distressed sale through her fake authority schemes and systematic harassment campaigns. The financial records seized from Martha's house reveal the staggering scope of this operation's profitability. Lakefront properties worth an average of $450,000 are being targeted for acquisition at approximately $200 through coordinated pressure tactics that exploit homeowners' ignorance of their legal rights. Over the past 3 years, Premier Property Acquisition has successfully purchased 17 properties in our county alone, generating profits exceeding $2 million from families forced to sell under duress. Martha's personal cut from these transactions totals over $630,000, making her harassment campaigns extremely lucrative criminal enterprises. But the most personally devastating discovery comes when Detective Orozco shows me documents proving that Martha has been targeting my cabin specifically for over 2 years, dating back to shortly after my grandfather's death. Real estate records show that Premier Property Acquisition attempted to contact the estate attorney handling probate proceedings, offering to purchase the property for $180 when its actual market value was assessed at $420,000. When the estate rejected their lowball offer and I inherited the cabin instead, Martha initiated her fake HOA scheme as an alternative method of forcing me to sell at their preferred price point. Martha's psychological manipulation reaches even deeper levels of cruelty when I discover that she researched Michael's suicide extensively before targeting me. Her files contain detailed newspaper clippings about his death, copies of the fraudulent foreclosure documents used against him in Colorado, and strategic notes about exploiting my grief as leverage in her harassment campaign. She specifically chose tactics similar to those used against Michael, hoping to trigger psychological trauma that would break my resistance and force me to abandon my property, rather than relive my cousin's experience. The calculated evil of weaponizing family tragedy for financial gain represents a level of sociopathic manipulation that defies comprehension. The evidence also reveals that Martha's network extends far beyond simple property acquisition into political corruption designed to reshape property ownership laws at the state level. Email correspondence shows regular communication with Senator Robert Hayes, a politician who has been pushing legislation to weaken property rights protections and expand the authority of community organizations to override individual homeowner decisions. The proposed laws would legitimize exactly the kind of fake authority Martha has been exercising illegally, creating a legal framework that would allow her schemes to operate with government sanction rather than criminal prosecution. As I stand in the ruins of my garage, surrounded by the charred remains of my possessions and the overwhelming evidence of Martha's criminal conspiracy, I realize that this fight has evolved far beyond a simple neighborhood dispute. Martha Goldman represents the advanced guard of asystematic assault on property rights and individual freedom, and using manufactured authority and coordinated violence to reshape American communities according to the profit motives of wealthy investors. Her willingness to commit attempted murder to protect her criminal enterprise demonstrates that she considers human life expendable in pursuit of her financial goals. The question now becomes whether our legal system has the strength and integrity to confront this level of organized corruption, or whether Martha's political connections and financial resources will allow her to escape justice once again. With Danny Morrison's confession, physical evidence of arson, and Jennifer Walsh's document archive, I finally have the weapons needed to destroy Martha's empire completely. But I also know that cornered predators are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose. And Martha's next move will likely be even more desperate and violent than burning down my house. The war between us is entering its final phase, and only one of us will emerge with our freedom intact. The federal investigation that follows Danny Morrison's confession moves with the swift efficiency of a machine designed to crush organized crime. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres arrives at my cabin 48 hours after the arson attempt, bringing with her a team of forensic accountants, cyber crime specialists, and racketeering prosecutors who transform my property into the command center for a multi-state operation. Agent Torres explains that my case has become the key to dismantling a criminal network that has been operating under federal radar for over a decade, using property fraud schemes to launder money and corrupt local governments across the American Southwest. My role as the primary witness in this federal case requires testifying before a grand jury in the state capitol, where I present Jennifer Walsh's evidence archive alongside my own documentation of Martha's crimes. The 23 citizens who comprise the grand jury listen with growing outrage as I detail the systematic nature of Martha's operation, from fake HOA schemes to attempted murder designed to protect illegal profits. Their unanimous decision to issue federal indictments against Martha Goldman, Premier Property Acquisition LLC, and their entire network sends a clear message that property rights fraud will face the full weight of federal prosecution. The criminal trial unfolds over 6 intense weeks, during which Martha's carefully constructed facade of legitimacy crumbles under relentless legal scrutiny. Federal prosecutors present overwhelming evidence of racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and violation of civil rights under color of law. Martha's defense team attempts to portray her as a misguided community volunteer whose good intentions were exploited by criminal associates. But this narrative collapses when prosecutors play recordings of her planning sessions, where she discusses eliminating problems and permanent solutions for uncooperative property owners. The turning point in the trial comes when Martha herself takes the witness stand against her attorney's advice, apparently believing she can charm thievery with her community-minded rhetoric. Instead, her testimony reveals the depth of her narcissistic delusion and complete lack of empathy for her victims. When the prosecutor asks about Michael's suicide, Martha responds that weak people who can't handle community standards shouldn't own property in desirable areas. Her callous dismissal of human life shocks the courtroom and seals her fate with a jury that had been deliberating her level of culpability. The verdicts deliver justice with mathematical precision that satisfies my need for closure while ensuring Martha can never harm another family. Martha Goldman received 18 years in federal prison for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and civil rights violations. Danny Morrison gets 6 years for arson and attempted murder. though his cooperation with federal investigators earns him a reduced sentence. Marcus Jennings faces disbarment and 5 years in prison for using false legal credentials to threaten and intimidate crime victims. The systematic dismantling of their organization sends shock waves through similar criminal networks operating in other states. The civil litigation provides financial compensation that helps rebuild what Martha destroyed, but more importantly establishes legal precedents that protect future victims from similar schemes. The federal court awarded $2.3 million in compensatory and punitive damages to be distributed among all documented victims of Martha's various operations. Emily Carter receives enough money to quit her second job and spend more time with her children. The Miller family gets funds for home modifications that make their property accessible during Patricia's ongoing cancer treatment. These victories transform abstract legal concepts into concrete improvements in real people's lives. Senator Robert Hayes becomes the highest-profile casualty of the federal investigation when his communications with Martha's network expose a corruption scheme that reaches into the highest levels of state government. FBI wiretaps reveal conversations where Hayes discusses specific legislative language designed to legitimize fake community organizations in exchange for campaign contributions channeled through Premier Property Acquisitions and Political Action Committee. His resignation in disgrace triggers a comprehensive review of property rights legislation that strengthens protections for individual homeowners against fraudulent authority claims. The media attention surrounding the trial creates a national conversation about property rights and community governance that extends far beyond our lakefront. Neighborhood, Monica Rivera's documentary series wins a Peabody Award for investigative journalism, bringing international attention to the vulnerability of American property owners to sophisticated fraud schemes. Netflix has purchased rights to our story for a limited series that will educate millions of viewers about the warning signs of fake authority organizations and the importance of verifying the legitimacy of community claims. These systemic changes that emerge from our case create lasting protections for property owners across the entire United States. Congress passes the Property Owner Protection Act, requiring federal verification of all community organizations before they can legally collect fees or impose regulations on residents. The FBI establishes a specialized task force dedicated to investigating community fraud schemes with funding specifically earmarked for training local law enforcement to recognize and respond to fake authority organizations. A national database of legitimate HOAs provides instant verification services that prevent criminals from exploiting homeowner confusion about community governance. 1 year after Martha's conviction, I host the first annual Freedom from Fraud Festival on my lakefront property, welcoming over 200 attendees, including former victims from multiple states, federal investigators who worked our case, and legislators who authored the new protection laws. The celebration serves multiple purposes: honoring the courage of those who spoke out against Martha's crimes, educating new residents about their rights and protections, and demonstrating that communities can heal and thrive when freed from the fear of fraudulent authority. The festival becomes an annual tradition that transforms our neighborhood from a crime scene into a symbol of resistance against property fraud. Emily Carter's children play on the beach while their mother networks with other single parents who found strength through our shared struggle against Martha's organization. Jeff Morrison displays his American flag with pride, knowing that his military service protected the very freedoms that Martha tried to destroy through her fake community regulations. The Miller family enjoys their renovated home with Patricia's health stabilized and Robert serving as a volunteer coordinator for the property rights advocacy group we established to help other fraud victims navigate the legal system. The most meaningful moment of the festival comes when I visit Michael's grave with a framed copy of Martha's conviction notice and a photograph of our community celebration standing beside his headstone. I finally have the closure that eluded me for 3 years since his death. "We got them, Mike," I say quietly, placing fresh flowers beside the conviction documents. "Your death wasn't meaningless. It gave us the strength to fight back and make sure no other family suffers what ours did." The peace I feel in that moment validates every risk I took and every sleepless night I endured during our battle against Martha's criminal empire. As the sun sets over Crystal Lake during our festival celebration, I reflect on how this fight transformed me from a naive new homeowner into an advocate for property rights and community safety. My architectural practice has evolved to include security consulting for vulnerable communities, helping residents identify and defend against fake authority schemes before they can take root. The cabin that Martha tried to steal through fraud and violence has become the headquarters for a nonprofit organization that provides free legal assistance to property fraud victims across the nation. The final victory in our long struggle comes not from legal verdicts or financial settlements, but from the knowledge that Martha Goldman's criminal empire has been permanently destroyed and her methods exposed to public scrutiny. Property values in our area have increased by 40% as word spreads that our community successfully resisted organized crime and established strong protections against future fraud attempts. The lakefront neighborhood that Martha tried to control through fear and intimidation has become a model of informed citizen resistance that inspires similar movements in communities. Facing comparable threats, we proved that ordinary people can defeat sophisticated criminals when they refuse to be intimidated and fight back with truth, evidence, and unwavering determination to protect their fundamental rights. Fighting Martha's fake HOA taught me that ordinary people can defeat sophisticated criminals when we refuse to stay silent. Your property rights matter, and no one should have to face fraudulent authority alone. Suppose this story helped you recognize warning signs or gave you the courage to stand up for your rights. In that case, I'd appreciate it if you could hit the like button and subscribe to Happer Stories for more real-life experiences about justice and community resistance. Together we can protect families from predators who profit from fear and deception.